India's current trajectory will not lead us to prosperity. By the time we catch up with the West of today, the world would have surpassed us. India's only option then is to leapfrog the West. "75 years. That's how long it'll take for the per capita income in India to catch up with where the West is today. I'll be dead, most of you will be too old or dead, and your children will be old. And that's the good news. For the bad news, if the rate of growth drops by 2%, it'll add another 40 years. If there's a war or a climate emergency, that'll add 20 years. And if there's a pandemic, another 10 years. But the news isn't all bad. Every area in our lives is being disrupted, be it AI, medicine, robotics, or energy. So this is an opportunity for us to leapfrog the West. And this is India's only good option. The question is, how? Let me be frank. I am a big admirer of the West. It has given us a scientific revolution, it has given us democracy at scale, and it has given us the world's best justice system. It has given us electricity, it has given us computers, it has given us automobiles, fertilizers, and everything that makes modern life possible. And it is still a remarkable engine of growth. But this rapid rate of change is exposing some of the fault lines in the foundations of the West. Its political process is brittle, and their economic thinking is leading us into a morass of wars and climate disasters, unnecessarily. We need to leapfrog, not because of geopolitical reasons like the Chinese did, but for our children and grandchildren to have a better world. We need a world that is more free and more just and more equal, with much higher standards of living and more, not less, technological innovation. Is this even possible? I hope to demonstrate to you that it is. Is this implementable? I hope to demonstrate to you that it is. Let's start with some basics. Any civilization that is successful is so because of three reasons: how they think, how they organize, and how they live. The scientific method has been at the foundation of Western thought for the last 500 years. Every discovery, every piece of technology that is used today owes itself to this. The institutions of the West have provided us a basis on which remarkable progress has been made. The democratic republics of the last 300 years, the universities, the legal systems, and of course the corporations and free markets have been phenomenal. The planned cities and transportation infrastructure of the West has also been a remarkable achievement. But if it is all so good, why is it that improvement in our living standards comes at the cost of destruction of our planet? In fact, I'll argue the opposite. We can achieve massive increases in standards of living while being a positive influence on the planet. It just needs better ideas. But if it is also good, why is it that you cannot identify many elected officials who put your interest before theirs? Again, I'll argue that it is possible to have more freedom and liberty while improving governance. But if it is also good, what explains the unhealthy population in a rich country like the US? What explains the scourge of mental health issues? Again, I'll argue that it is possible to design out most of these problems while massively improving living standards. Now you can stop me and ask me, what do we do specifically? Seriously, you expect me to explain all this in 2 minutes? This is not entertainment, guys. It's serious stuff. In 2 minutes, the best I can do is a 50,000-foot view. For the rest, you'll have to watch my future episodes. I'll tell stories and illustrate principles, solutions, and ideas in these stories. I'll pose interesting challenges to interesting people. I'll make it fun. You just listen, think, and digest. But here's the gist in 3 minutes. Einstein once said, "You cannot solve problems by using the same kind of thinking that was used that resulted in these problems." The first thing you need to do is to clear out old beliefs and assumptions. Some that are obvious, some that you did not know you had. I will show you how. The second is to redesign these three areas from scratch, from first principles. That's what Yukti Marg does. We solve problems, large and small, rigorously from first principles. So our future episodes will include how to redesign systems of thought, how to redesign how organizations are structured, and how to redesign how we live. And third, and finally, and most importantly, we need to make this happen. This brings us to the how. I know. You need some meat. So let me give you a glimpse of the thought process. This is just a thought experiment, so we're just brainstorming here, okay? So when I talk to my friends about this, the usual response is as follows. India is too big. Good luck dealing with the politicians. Indians don't have the guts to do this. They're too lazy and too corrupt. It's just not possible. But when faced with a large, intractable problem, the best approach is to define a Manhattan Project. For those that don't know, the Manhattan Project was a US attempt to build an atomic bomb during World War II. In 1942, the US realized that Germany had a 4-year lead under the leadership of Werner Heisenberg, a remarkable scientist. If Hitler had not been phenomenally stupid and not insulted and underfunded Heisenberg, we'd be living in a very different world. Well, the US recruited Robert Oppenheimer, then just a professor at the University of California, to make the atomic bomb. They built a town for him in the middle of the New Mexico desert and gave him the freedom and resources to go build this thing with no political interference. 2 years later, they'd beaten the Germans to the bomb, and the rest is history. Well, if you get a chance, you should try and understand the challenges that were faced by Oppenheimer. Not from the silly movie Oppenheimer. If you get a chance, watch National Geographic's American Genius episode on Heisenberg versus Oppenheimer. I've left a link in the details. And now to India's Manhattan Project. A Manhattan Project has two key aspects. One is a clear, extremely ambitious goal. For the original Manhattan Project, it was to build the atomic bomb as quickly as possible. The second is to put a highly competent team in charge of the project with freedom and resources and very little political interference. In our case, we can take a leaf from the Chinese. At the beginning of their journey, in 1979 to 1981, China approved 4 special economic zones in Zhuhai, Shantou, Xiamen, and Guangdong. They were tasked with creating world-class manufacturing capabilities. These were then replicated multiple times, and today, China accounts for over 40% of world manufacturing. For us, moving into the middle of the 21st century, our equivalent would be special living zones. Crucibles to test and drastically improve governance, standards of living, health, education, and innovation at a low cost. Well, that doesn't sound very radical, does it? Well, it does when you add constraints. So let's look at some potential ones. The first one could be that these are places where people from the richest countries in the world would fight to come and live in. Another could be that the team operating them get to pick only 20% of the inhabitants. The remaining 80% come from India's marginalized communities, with similar living standards for each inhabitant. And yet another could be that all food consumed within the zone comes from less than a kilometer away, or that there is zero net pollution, or that all energy is produced locally. And we could add 100 other constraints, but with ironclad, strong foundations of liberty and equity. So you kind of get an idea of how to bring these ideas to life. In future episodes of Yukti Marg, we'll go into details of some of these aspects. Enjoy the ride.